Endwalker, an expansion that has given us many memorable memories, both good and bad. It's also the finale of the Hydaelyn Zodiac story, where the Warrior Lights and the Scions witness the final days of the world, and they travel to the edge of the universe to stop the madness. The Warrior Light, aka us, the players, defeats the Endsinger, saving the world from the final days and also destroying Xenos. But after saving the world and celebrating the victory, the Scions disbands and each member goes on their own path before they will all come back together for the next journey. Leading up to the next expansion, the Warrior Lights and the Scions defeats Golbez and the four fiends, preventing them from causing havoc on the source. They also met a new ally, which they named her Zero, and at the end, Golbez becomes a good guy. Both Zero and Golbez decides to try to find a way to save their world from darkness. I don't remember the story. I'm sorry. I didn't really pay attention to the story in 6.1 onwards or post Endwalker. But Endwalker is the first expansion that I experienced through. I started playing FF14 and Shadowbringers, like late Shadowbringers, I think like 5 to 6 months before Endwalker came out. So I was still a new player going into Endwalker and not really knowing a lot about the jobs, raiding, and more. But in those 3 years of playing the game, I've learned a lot of stuff and had, many fun times. With Dawntrail on the horizon, I think it's time to look back on some of the things that were added and some of the things that happened in Endwalker. Now, throughout Endwalker, there were things that I enjoyed and there were things that I did not enjoy. And also there were things that people enjoyed and there were things that other people did not enjoy. I don't know where to start, but I really enjoy the environments of the Alliance raids. Maybe because I just like nature, but aesthetically, I like how the Mist of the Realms Alliance raids look. Even though the fights or the mechanics weren't like very interesting or they weren't very challenging, but I hope in Dawntrail they can find a balance of making the Alliance raids not too easy and also not too hard. I remember when I first heard Pilgrimage, which is the name of the song that you first hear in Aglaya, I remember having the feeling of like, am I in heaven? Because we are fighting the 12s, but the atmosphere of being up in the sky and the clouds and with the music, it was like, whoa. 2 new jobs were added into Endwalker, Sage and Reaper, and I thought they were cool. They both played really well in Endwalker, and I think aesthetically they look awesome, and there's nothing much to say. Island Sanctuary was interesting. I remember the first week of Island Sanctuary where I remember like I was hyped. I was like, man, this content is gonna be awesome. But sadly, it didn't turn out that way. Like, I know some people enjoy Island Sanctuary, which is fine, that's awesome. But me personally, like after getting everything, all the mounts, glams, and all the other stuff, it was just like, well, I guess that's it. There wasn't really much to do after you got everything. Like Square Enix added more landmarks, they added more animals, more cosmetics, but like that was really it though. And they also added a feature later on in one of the patches where you could place furnitures in your island, like housing. But it still didn't really like interest me. I mean, I do have some furniture in my island, but like it just looks like a freaking ghost town or a ghost island or whatever. And again, at the beginning I was excited for Island Sanctuary, but once you know like the routine and like once you know everything, it's just like there really isn't much to do in the island, which is unfortunate because I was really excited, but they didn't really do much to it. The jaw balance in Endwalker was something. Man, I remember Paladin and Machinist, they were like in the abyss for like half the life cycle of Endwalker. Like I remember PFs didn't allow Machinist or Paladin at all, because if I remember correctly, I might be wrong on this, because both of the jobs just didn't do like a lot of damage, and like it was brutal. But then like a couple of weeks before Anabasis came out, both of the jobs got better, with Machinist gaining buffs and Dismantle as well, and Paladin getting like a rework or something, and people started playing those two jobs more, and you know, they both got better like literally near the end of Endwalker or somewhere around there. And also Red Mage was also excluded from a couple of PFs as well. I mean, like at the beginning of Endwalker, the balance wasn't really balanced, and you know, it was weird. The trials in Endwalker, there was only two that I really enjoyed. The two that I enjoyed was Babaricia and Gobez. Personally, I enjoyed those two because those two fights were a little more fast-paced compared to the other trials that was released in Endwalker. And I'm talking about the extreme versions, not the normal versions. The trials overall, it's pretty decent. It's okay. But aesthetically, I do think that, like, you know, the environments around the arena, like, they look awesome. The Pandemonium raids were somewhat, I guess, I'll say that I enjoyed some of the fights. I don't know, I think the raids were 50-50 for me. There were certain fights that I enjoyed, like I like P10 and I enjoyed P3. And I'm talking about the Savage versions, by the way. I'm not talking about the normal versions. Yeah, so I like P3, even though it was brutal in the Party Finder. And I kind of like P5, you know, and P8. But there were also some fights that I did not enjoy, like P6 and P7S. Personally, for me, the Pandemonium raids were somewhat good and also weren't that good, you know. Again, you know, it's 50-50 for me, but you know, some other people may have different opinions, which is fine. I thought the variant dungeons were interesting. There's 3 different paths, and like you could fight all the 3 bosses, and you could also fight the secret boss, but like there's like many ways to like add in like certain mechanics into like the bosses that you haven't seen before. There's like 12 different ways, including the secret boss. Oh, and we also can't forget about the amazing rewards from Criterion and Criterion Savage. And I think everyone was not happy about that. The rewards were like so like spectacular that I did not touch any of the Criterion dungeons. But I will in the future, someday. We could only hope in Dawntrail that Criterion and the Savage version as well will be better. Hopefully. Hildebrand makes a comeback, and along with Hildebrand, you have the Mandeville relics. Now, one of the things I don't like about the Mandeville relics is how much it is tied to the Hildebrand story quest or whatever. You have to do like a certain amount of like the Hildebrand story quest or whatever to actually unlock the relic. Now, getting the relics is, you know, it's not too complicated. You just get 1500 tomestones and that's it. In total, you need 6000 to get one relic weapon, and basically times that by 19, you know, 19 jobs in the game, not including Blue Mage. And speaking of Blue Mage, they also added a new Blue Mage thing to the Mask Carnival or Carnival, whatever. And also they added new actions that you can learn in the Shadowbringers content. And the new PvP mode, Crystalline Conflict, was also added in Endwalker. And also in Endwalker, a 3rd deep dungeon was also released, which is Eureka Orthos. I thought Eureka Orthos was okay. For me personally, it's my least favorite deep dungeon, you know, out of the 3 in the game. Like, I thought aesthetically, the deep dungeon looks cool, even though the crystal caves are kind of like the ones from Palace of the Dead. And you also have these Sasquatches that are very terrifying because of their out of combat AoEs. I know some people enjoy Eureka Orthos and some people don't like Eureka Orthos, but we'll have to wait another 3 or 4 years for another deep dungeon. They said they have plans for it in the next expansion, but we don't know what that means. So I thought the addition to Adventure Place was an awesome implementation. It gives other people an idea, you know, especially when they look at your Adventure play to get an idea of like what you like or what you enjoyed the most in Final Fantasy XIV. Although it could be a pain in the ass to switch portraits or whatever, right? And the many ways to customize your adventure play is cool. And we also had the Fall Guys in Final Fantasy XVI collaboration with their glamours, mounts, and other goodies, furnishings. The new housing lottery system was also added in Endwalker as well. And also these new options were added into the game like halfway through the expansion, and the increase of yalms to like certain party buffs and healing AoEs were also implemented as well. And watching people clear DSR and top was like amazing. Like, I never been in those fights myself, but like watching those fights when they first came out was awesome. Seeing everybody prog, like it was intense and like a heart-beating moment, you know, especially when you're in the last phase, when you're close to victory, to clearing. And you know, many other things, but like there were also like funny things that happened in Endwalker as well, like the tank damage down strat in P1S for the mechanic Intemperance. Or like the DPS check in phase 1 of P8S in the beginning of Abyssos. Or Rogger pushing everybody off of the arena like on day 1 of Aglaya. Tank towers. Venomous mass. Or like the UAV online mechanic in P12S. And many more. But Endwalker for me was the expansion where I tried to explore the other contents in FF14. Although there were many problems in Endwalker, there was a lot of things that I accomplished. I started raiding in Endwalker. I started from clearing extremes to clearing savage fights, and then clearing Ubu, which is the first ultimate fight that I ever cleared. And then eventually I will go into the other ultimates and try to clear those. Seeing the progression of myself as a player and seeing how much I improve as a player is truly spectacular. I cleared all 3 deep dungeons on solo. I ventured into Eureka and Borgia. I started to play all the jobs in the game. I'm trying to get a house, sadly still. I started to play Blue Mage more. I created the tree. I completed the Sky Steel and Splendiferous tools for all crafters and gatherers, and many more. But there are still things that I want to complete in FF14. Goals that are waiting to be checked off. And hopefully I can achieve those tasks in Dawntrail in the next expansion. And with that, it's now time to go on a new journey.